Hey y'all, I'm in here on this wonderfully cool summer day in the mudroom bathroom, and I'm gonna start tiling the shower walls. The first thing I'm doing is tiling the corner shelves. I'm using some triangle pieces that I cut out of the same tile that I used on the floor. I'm also using some metal round tack as the trim. Before I start tiling the wall, I want to do a little bit of planning. So I am taking a tile and a tile spacer, and I'm just working my way up the wall. I want to know how much tile is going to be left at the top if I use a full tile at the bottom. And it worked out pretty good in this case. I'm going to have almost a full tile at the top. If you get to the top and you just have a little sliver, like 1 inch, then you might want to cut some off of your very first bottom tile. Alright, so I'm going to be putting up a 12 by 6 tile, and I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch by 3/8 inch square notch trowel. These are the spacers I'm going to be using. They're both 1/8 of an inch. I'm using two different types. One is a wedge type of spacer, and this is really handy to have in certain situations. All right, I have my laser level set up. I have the center line marked with this one, and I have the top edge of the first row marked with that. Okay, so I just used a pencil and marked the center line. I'll be doing this the whole time. That's how I will line it up with the center, as well as how I will line it up for the brick pattern that I'm going to be doing. Now I'm just applying the thin set. I want to make sure all the trowel lines are going in the same direction, and in this case, since I'm using a rectangle tile, I want the trowel lines to be perpendicular to the long side of the tile. So in this case, that's going to be straight up and down. As I put the tile on, I am pressing it and then moving it back and forth slightly to collapse the trowel lines to get good coverage on the back of the tile. I'm using the 1/8 of an inch wedge spacers underneath the tile to make the top of the tile level with my laser level. So for this corner tile, I have to make a cut. Like with any tile, when you're going up against the wall, you want to leave about 1/8 of an inch gap just to allow for movement. So I'm going to be cutting it, leaving about 1/8 of an inch in the corner, and we'll put it up. So I'm not using the laser level the whole entire time, but after I do 2 or 3 rows, I do turn it on just to check and make sure that I'm still level and that my center line is still good. Now that I have tiled up to where the corner shelves are, I'm gonna have to make some cuts with the tile saw. And this piece that I'm putting up now, I was not happy with the way it looked, so I actually ended up taking it out and redoing it later on. You'll see that at the very end. But this is basically how I cut all these pieces out for around the corner shelves. All right, now I'm gonna start on this side of the wall. I've got my center line marked. I used the laser level to do it, and I centered everything on this pretty much the center of the bathtub, but where all the spouts and stuff are. So everything will be centered off of that. So over here on this side, I am using some cove mold as the end piece for the tile. This specific tile that I'm using didn't have a bullnose option, so I had to come up with something else. So I'm just using this. So the tile should pretty much come out even with the top of it. And I'm gonna paint this either the color of the wall, or I might try to color match the tile and paint it the same thing as the tile. I'm not sure yet. Or I might just leave it white so it matches all the crown molding and baseboard. So we'll see. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, this is gonna be my first piece, and it's gonna hit this pipe. So I'm gonna mark where I need to cut, and I'm going to drill that out with a hole saw. All right, so I marked the center of the tile. That way I can line it up with the center line. So I'm going to use the square, and I'm going to mark exactly where I need that hole cut. Based off the marks that I use. All right, so this area right in here needs to be cut out. Alright, so that looks pretty good. All right, y'all, I have all the towel up, so let's see how I did. Okay, so over here I used a 3/4 inch cove mold as an end trim piece. And if you remember, we can see it down here, the concrete backer board stuck out a little bit further than the drywall. So this was able to cover that difference as well as the thickness of the tile. So that worked out perfect. Let's see, we have some of the crown molding up already. So it just butts up to the crown molding. And then over here, it's just gonna butt up to the door trim. This is just a temporary piece. That's not the permanent trim. That was just to give me a guide of where to put the tile. And then up above that, I used some more cove mold. So let's see how I did on my cuts over here. That's acceptable for me. The spout will cover up that hole. We'll cover all that. That probably could have been a little bit tighter in, but the mixer trim should cover all that as well. And up there, that looks pretty good. That one's pretty tight. Let's see. Okay, the cuts over here around the niche, or around the shelves, I had a little bit of trouble. These look decent. And then this one I had trouble with. Well, you see, I got a little bit of overcut there, so I could have done better on that. And then this bottom piece, I tried to cut this as one whole piece of tile so that there were no cuts in it, but this little piece kept snapping off when I was handling it. So I had to make that a separate piece. So that's not perfect, but I'm okay with it. So it's good enough. So I could have done a little bit better on some of these cuts. I have a little overcuts on those, but, and then another thing, I did struggle a little bit with this tile. It is kind of weird. So it's supposed to be a distressed look. And I think to add to that, they made it, it's like flat in the middle, and then it gets thicker on the edges. And because of that, I did end up with some lippage. Let me find a good spot. Let's see, it's less than an 1/8 of an inch, but I mean, there's still a little bit of lippage. Like here's some more. So I did struggle a little bit just because the tiles were a little irregular, but I think that they're that way to add to the distressed look. And if we look straight up, I mean, it's not horrible, but there is, like, there's a little bit, like there's a little bit right there, but I mean, not too bad. So this, to me, this is acceptable. A little bit of lippage, I don't know, to a professional tile person, it might not be acceptable to have that much lippage. And I know with some large format tiles, you can't do this brick pattern. The most that you can offset is 1/3 of the tile. So like, you can't, this is a half of an offset. So the most that you can offset is about 1/3. Because if you do a brick pattern, the lippage will be really bad. But this tile should be small enough to do a brick pattern. So I don't think that's my problem. I think it's just the tiles were irregular. But I don't think it's too bad. Like, actually, that's, I mean, it's all, like, this is 1/8 of an inch thick. And that is not even, so most of them are about 1/16 of an inch sticking out lippage. But like I say, I'm okay with it. So when you're doing these do-it-yourself projects, you have to go into it understanding that they're not gonna end up perfect. Even if you hire a professional, those probably aren't gonna end up absolutely perfect either. But so, you know, you saw a little bit of issues that I have. I'm okay with it. I can live with these little imperfections. I think it adds a little bit of character. But I'm overall pleased with how it turned out. And our next step will be to grout. So stay tuned for that video.